In 1942, a woman working alone at her desk in Washington, D.C., discovered that Nazi spies had located one of the largest Allied troop ships in the world, the Queen Mary, off the coast of Brazil. Hitler himself had offered $250,000 to any German submarine captain who could sink it. More than 8,000 soldiers were on board. She cracked the Nazi code. She sent the warning. The Queen Mary changed course. 8,000 men survived. The woman's name was Elizebeth Smith Friedman. She was America's first female cryptanalyst, a woman who broke Nazi codes using nothing but pencil, paper, and one of the most remarkable minds of the 20th century. You have probably never heard of her. And that is not an accident, because when the war ended, a powerful man decided that her story, her victories, her intelligence, her work belonged to him, and he buried her name so completely that she took her secrets to the grave. This is her story. Elizebeth Smith was born on August 26, 1892 in Huntington, Indiana, the youngest of 9 children in a Quaker farming family. From childhood, she was exceptional, sharp, curious, and obsessed with literature. She loved Shakespeare. She loved poetry. She loved puzzles. In 1916, at the age of 23, she visited a library in Chicago to look at a rare first edition of Shakespeare's plays. A librarian, impressed by her interest, introduced her to a man named George Fabian, an eccentric millionaire who was funding a research project at his private laboratory called Riverbank. Fabian believed that Sir Francis Bacon had secretly written Shakespeare's plays and hidden coded messages inside them to prove it. He needed someone to crack the codes. Elizebeth took the job. She moved to Riverbank, and almost immediately she discovered 2 things. First, that Fabian was wrong. Bacon had not written Shakespeare. There were no hidden messages. Second, that she was extraordinarily, almost supernaturally gifted at breaking codes. Any code, every code. At Riverbank, she also met a young geneticist named William Friedman. They fell in love over encrypted messages. They married in 1917, and together they would become, as one historian later put it, the Adam and Eve of American code breaking. After World War I, Elizebeth and William moved to Washington, D.C. to work for the government. But while William's career in the army grew steadily, Elizebeth found herself undervalued, underpaid, and overlooked. She quit in frustration. Then, in 1925, the United States Coast Guard came to her with an urgent problem. Prohibition had created a massive illegal alcohol trade. Smugglers were bringing rum in by sea, and they were using sophisticated coded radio messages to coordinate their operations. The Coast Guard couldn't crack the codes. Nobody could. Elizebeth could. Working with pencil and paper, she decoded 2 years' worth of smugglers' messages, 12,000 in total. Her intelligence led to 650 criminal prosecutions. Her testimony as an expert witness put some of the most dangerous gangsters in America behind bars, including members of Al Capone's operation in New Orleans. Newspapers called her the Lady Manhunter. She hated it. She was not interested in fame. She was interested in the work. By 1931, the Coast Guard created its first official code-breaking unit. Elizebeth Friedman was put in charge. She was the first woman in American history to lead a government code-breaking team. When World War II began, Elizabeth's unit was transferred to the Navy. And then, despite being one of the most experienced codebreakers in America, she was demoted. The military did not allow women to lead intelligence units. A younger, less experienced male lieutenant was placed above her. She said nothing. She simply got back to work. By 1942, Elizabeth had discovered something alarming. Nazi Germany had built an extensive spy network across South America. Nazi agents in Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, and Chile were sending encrypted radio messages back to Berlin, reporting on the movements of Allied ships, the positions of military forces, and the plans of Allied governments. The information was being used to target Allied supply lines. Ships were being sunk. Men were dying. The Nazi spies were using the Enigma machine, the same encryption system that Alan Turing was working to break in Britain, but Elizabeth was working on it in America, alone, with pencil and paper, no bomb machine, no team of hundreds, just her mind. By December 1942, she had cracked all 3 variants of the Nazi Enigma codes being used in South America, every single one, using nothing but analog methods that she had largely invented herself. And then Edgar Hoover entered the picture. Hoover was the director of the FBI, the most powerful law enforcement official in America, and one of the most politically ambitious. He wanted credit for defeating the Nazi spy network in South America. He wanted it badly enough to act recklessly. Without coordinating with Elizabeth's team, Hoover sent FBI agents to South America to begin arresting Nazi spies. He didn't understand, or didn't care, that raiding the network prematurely would alert the remaining spies that their codes had been broken. They would go silent, change their encryption, start again. That is exactly what happened. The Nazi communications went dark. All of Elizabeth's progress was wiped out overnight. She had to start from the beginning, this time cracking new, even more complex ciphers. She did it again. When the war ended, Hoover launched a public relations campaign to claim the victory as his own. He commissioned magazine articles. He produced a propaganda film, directed by Frank Capra, called The Battle of the United States. Neither the articles nor the film mentioned Elizabeth Friedman, not once. The FBI even recatalogued Elizabeth's original intelligence reports under the FBI's own filing system, erasing her name from the documents she had created. Elizabeth had signed a wartime oath of secrecy. She was forbidden by law from correcting the record. She watched Hoover take her life's greatest achievement and could say nothing. When the war ended, Elizabeth's code-breaking unit was disbanded. She worked briefly for the International Monetary Fund. Then she retired to care for William, whose mental health had been destroyed by the stress of his own wartime work. She nursed him until his death in 1969. In 1956, Time magazine published a profile of William Friedman, praising his brilliant code-breaking career and listing his many awards and honors. The article mentioned Elizabeth once. It described her as an assistant cipher clerk. She had cracked 12,000 codes. She had put Al Capone's network behind bars. She had defeated the Nazi spy ring in South America. She had saved 8,000 soldiers on the Queen Mary. She had done what the FBI could not do. Assistant cipher clerk. Elizabeth Smith Friedman died on October 31st, 1980, in New Jersey. She was 88 years old. She had kept her oath to the end. She never publicly revealed what she had done during the war. Her true role remained classified until 2008, 28 years after her death, when government documents were finally declassified and the world slowly began to learn who she really was. Recognition came slowly, painfully slowly. In 2017, journalist Jason Fagone published a biography called The Woman Who Smashed Codes. It became a bestseller. people finally began to learn her name. In 2021, PBS's American Experience broadcast a documentary about her life. In the same year, a biography called The Woman All Spies Fear was published by historian Amy Butler Greenfield. And in July 2020, the United States Coast Guard announced that it was naming one of its most powerful warships in her honor, the USCGC Friedman, a Legend-class national security cutter, one of the largest ships in the Coast Guard fleet. Her name, finally, on something that would last. Historians now believe that Elizebeth Friedman, together with her husband William, effectively founded the science of modern cryptanalysis. The techniques she developed with pencil and paper in the 1910s and 1920s became the foundation of the methods that the NSA uses to this day. She met Ian Fleming, the author of James Bond, in the course of her intelligence work. Some historians believe that her life partly inspired the character of James Bond's allies in the intelligence world. Whether that is true or not, her real story is more extraordinary than any fiction. Elizebeth Smith Friedman broke Nazi codes with a pencil. She saved thousands of lives. She defeated a spy network that the FBI could not crack. She did it in silence, under oath, without recognition, without credit, without complaint. And when a powerful man decided that her achievements were his, she could not even defend herself. History is full of women like Elizebeth Friedman, women whose work was taken, renamed, buried, or simply forgotten. Women who were described as assistants when they were the ones doing the work. The difference is that we now know Elizabeth's name because documents were finally declassified and because journalists and historians refused to let her story disappear completely. How many others are still waiting to be found? If Elizabeth's story moved you, share it, because the least we can do is say her name. Subscribe to Silent Chronicles for more stories of the people history chose to forget.